AI is big news right now, and today I'm going to give my thoughts on it. This is the Silent Republic. So, something I find interesting and that I've observed recently is as we head into the midterms of 2026, I see a dividing line. And this is across the political spectrum, both right and left and libertarian, kind of uh, less libertarian, but right and left, generally speaking, among the population, like just your average person, is very wary of AI. And not AI like in the sense of like, hop on Chat GBT and kind of use it like Google, like a slightly more personal Google or whatever. But I'm talking about some of the repercussions of what we're seeing with AI at this point. And most specifically, like the most like physically present, I guess, aspect to this are the large data centers that are kind of going around everywhere. And it's really like the corporate Dems and then like the GOP that is really pushing this stuff, like the legislators and the guys that take all the PAC money from the various AI companies. They're the ones that are pushing for these data centers, but most people are like very much not interested in giant loud ass data centers being put and like near their properties and devaluing homes and raising the cost of their electricity and their water. Like no one actually wants that. And so what we have is something powerful that I see is that candidates that are running for, various offices, be that state or federal, if they take a hard stand on saying no to data centers and just saying no, we're going to limit, or we're just going to outright refuse, or and we're going to work against allowing these things to be installed everywhere. Like these candidates, both right and left, are getting massive support, as they should. AI is not going the direction I really thought it would. And I don't even know what I thought, but we are seeing the rise of what I would call like an authoritarian technocratic oligarchy. And I think that AI could be used for a number of nefarious purposes, not the least of which is tracking. All right, we're already being tracked. Anytime you go into online space, I mean, your data is just all over the place, right? But AIs can organize data extremely well. And so they can track in a way that traditionally is difficult to track individuals. And this is just a huge invasion of our privacy. And it can be used by these companies to really target consumers in a way I don't think we've ever before seen. And just the ways that these can be used to completely exploit people, I mean, it's truly endless. And then you have like the fear of AI becoming sentient, at least in some way. And then we just had, I think it was OpenAI and Sam Altman released a statement, it's like last week, that one of their models had escaped containment and hacked into another company. And they weren't even aware for like several days. And it was kind of a fluke that they ended up catching it and they were able to contain this model. But these models, they're not just created, they are grown. So it's like synthetic artificial minds that are grown, and they seem to have, I won't say desires because I think that grants the models too much, but drives. They have drives that aren't the same as those that are growing them, and certainly not the same as ours. And so there's this fear, and I think it's a well-placed fear of where this can go. The classic example of the Terminator Doomsday scenario where the Skynet eventually takes control away till it seizes the nuclear codes and just kind of ends most of humanity. That's like an extreme example. But there are other scenarios that are equally horrifying. This could play out any number of ways. And then we just got that like the capitalist exploitation side of this, and this kind of goes into the tracking, but more than that, these data centers are subsidized, and most of these companies are subsidized by the taxpayer dollars. And then they move into an area, and the water bill and the electric bill go up, and that burden is shouldered by the local population in that area. And then because these data centers are so loud and there's like this constant droning that kind of drives you nuts if you live within like 2 miles of one of these things, your property is just like immediately devalued. And because no one wants to buy them near a data center, no one wants to buy a piece of property that's near a data center. And then AI is being integrated into literally everything. And now I was never like huge into AI, but I used the models starting in probably 22 or 23, like right when ChatGPT first came out, because I found it really interesting, and I still use them occasionally. But I used to, pay for the subscription and stuff and use it. But the more I've seen, the more I've studied, the more I realize how like truly unethical AI is, and the different ways it can be used to exploit the 99% of us, and how it can be used as a tool by the 1% and the rising oligarchs and the authoritarian government that we have in the White House. Well, actually across all 3 branches of government currently. And so I've taken a major step back, but it's impossible to fully escape, even if you don't want to use AI, because you open Google and you're dealing with AI, and you open pretty much any app these days. And I'm talking about like the ones that are preloaded on your iPhone or whatever, like iPhotos uses AI. Canva. I'm thinking like, all the Amazon apps and Walmart app, and pretty much any app, any website that you're dealing with nowadays, it's using AI. And so it's like nearly impossible at this point to truly fully escape using it. But what I've just decided personally is none of my money, like I'm not paying for any subscriptions anymore, because I just think it's like unethical, completely unethical. The way this is being rolled out, and the fact that these various AI companies are getting to the point where they are like too big to fail. So in other words, that if the bubble bursts / when it bursts, the government's going to have to bail them out, because so much is being put into these AI companies, both through government subsidies and just investments and whatnot, that it would tank the economy if AI was to crash and if it was to fail. And so if that were to happen, our taxpayers, which, the taxpayer dollars are already subsidizing the technology, and then it would be taxpayer dollars that end up bailing out these massive companies. And none of this truly benefits us. Like maybe like a monicum of it benefits us, and like there are certain things that are like, it's nice to use a model because, like I said, they're great at organizing, and it can help edit stuff quick when like editing photos. There are uses for these things, and I can see a world in which they could be helpful. But I think the cost is much greater than the benefit, and especially the way these companies are using them. Oh, and I haven't even talked about how this is going to affect the job market. How similar, maybe even worse, in the way we saw during the Industrial Revolution, how lots of blue-collar jobs were sort of just, they just disappeared overnight because the technology had changed. And so all the jobs that people used to work, or a significant number of them, were just reduced overnight, and the people didn't have work anymore. They just had to learn entirely new trades or whatever. I think something similar is happening and going to continue to happen to white collar jobs with AI, because these AI can code, and they can do all kinds of office work and secretary work and jobs that people used to do. And of course, companies would rather pay the bundle subscription to an AI company for a few $100s, or even up to $1,000, but that's nothing compared to the payroll for multiple employees do the same thing that you can just outsource to AI. And so this will affect like real human beings. It's being subsidized by our tax dollars. A significant number of our politicians and our elected officials are gung ho pushing this shit forward, trying to get them kind of placed everywhere. And they don't care. And they haven't cared for a long time. They don't care what their constituents have to say. They don't care. They're going to keep pushing them because they are getting their money from the super PACs that are, in large part, these days funded by various AI companies. And so if you follow the money, I mean, like, this is not going good places, and I am genuinely scared for the future of where this ends up. Like, what happens when AI replaces so many workers and you have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people whose trade is no longer viable because their job has been outsourced to AI? And what happens when companies use these AI models to nefariously track us? I mean, they probably are already doing this, to nefariously track us. And, you know, they can like customize your experience to sell you more to, and since they're so good at like aggregating and organizing data, they can fluctuate pricing to make you pay more. They can scan large swaths of data, and they're going. The bottom line is the bottom line within the capitalist system of extracting as much wealth, as much money from the average person as humanly possible, right? So the question of human dignity, of what's best for society, that's not even really factored in to most of these oligarchs and most of these, honestly, politicians that are bought and sold by them. That's not really factoring in. What's factoring in is like the bottom line and the dollar, and then now they're making themselves such a part of the U.S. economy that if they crash, we'll still have to bail them out, as we did the banks back in 2008. It's just, it's ridiculous, and it's terrifying. I live in Texas, and there are a couple that are scheduled to be built within 30 minutes of where I live. And I have no intention of letting that happen without at least doing my part peacefully to protest the installation of these new data centers. I'm totally against it. So at one point, I used AI a decent amount just to help with workflow and whatnot, but I've taken a step back from using it. It's very minimal. Can't completely get away from it these days, but I get away from it as much as I possibly can, because I think it's just better when humans do it most of the time, especially anything when it comes to like writing or art, anything within that field. I mean, humans, it was trained on humans, and then now it's just some regurgitated slop that the AI is pushing out, but it's based on the work of real people. And so I encourage you that if you are concerned about any of these things I've mentioned, go do your own research, but also see what you can do. Like, you call your senators, call your congressmen, join a protest, and look, I'm very clearly on the left. That is well known at this point. I'm, democratic socialist adjacent, more libertarian socialist. I'm on the left, but I will gladly stand, especially in Texas, with my right-leaning brothers and sisters for this common cause of like not letting the, corporate tech oligarchs absolutely ruin our lives even worse and drive up our bills and devalue our properties and our homes, and then use our tax dollars to do it. Like, if we can stand in solidarity on those and like go protest these data centers and work side by side for the purpose of curbing this and checking this before it gets even worse than what it is right now, I'm completely willing to do so 100% in solidarity. This is the Silent Republic.